Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back into my final tier video. I'm going to be speaking about the oh so lovely tight end position, which I think at this point most fantasy football managers cannot stand dealing with every single season. But I'm going to go ahead and give you guys my approach, how I am viewing the tight ends entering this season. This tier video, a little bit of a little, I mean, it's still tiers, but I kind of factored in the current ADP on Fantasy Pros. I broke up the tight end ones and tight end twos based on where their current ADP is on Fantasy Pros, and I base it off 10-team leagues, just because, in my opinion, I mean, how I approach the tight end position, I only want one tight end on my roster. The only time I ever really want two tight ends on my roster is if my starting tight end is on a bye week. I just view the other having a tight end on your bench as a waste of space, but that's just my approach and my strategy. So yeah, let's just go ahead and dive right into this video. Usually I do have a Travis Kelce tier, but because he was not as consistently putting together weekly performances last year, I just grouped them in with my first tier, which is going to be the tight end ones that offer you a high floor tier. Obviously, Kelsey's number one tight end. If you decided you just want to pick a tight end, you don't want to have to stress about a tight end. Obviously, you just pick up Travis Kelce. Some other names: Mark Andrews. He'll be back from his injury last year. He should be seeing those significant amount of targets in that Ravens passing attack. It's going to basically be between on a week in and week out basis. It's either going to be him or Zay Flowers that lead Baltimore in targets in that passing attack. George Kittle, you do worry about his injuries, but I just view him as such a high floor player because he has those tight end, those peak weeks. And when George Kittle has a peak week, those are the weeks that you can get a win just from your tight end. And then the last two guys, David Njoku and Evan Ingram, I just view those guys as safe options. I feel like they're going to see a steady flow of targets, and then throughout the season they're going to have their tight end one type of performances. I don't have a lot of stats like I did in the previous tier where I try to find a group of 4 players that can fit in the categories I looked up, but I do got some notable stats on these guys. Now, obviously, all of these are going to be including Travis Kelce. One that was interesting, though, is Travis Kelce was among 4 players. The other 3 were wide receivers, which I talked about in my wide receiver tier video. If you want to know who those wide receivers are and you haven't watched that video, please go back and watch that. That came out on Saturday. But Kelce's among 4 players that have at least 1,500 yards after the catch and 25 plus receiving broken tackles, which we see him do. He'll catch those little like out routes, little dump offs from Mahomes, break a tackle, and you know how the Chiefs are; they get those chunk gains. Some other notable stats from these guys. Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, and George Kittle, they're among 4 tight ends that have at least 9 regular season games where they finished with 50 plus receiving yards and at least 1 touchdown since 2021. And then lastly, those 3 tight ends, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, and George Kittle, they're among 4 tight ends that have at least 10 75 plus receiving yard performances in the regular season over the last 3 years. Moving into the next tight end, these are going to be the final set of 5 tight ends that are currently qualified as tight end ones per the ADP on Fantasy Pros and 10-team leagues. Sam Laporta, we saw what he did for Detroit last year. He was a guy I took a shot on in late rounds that really paid off for me. And then basically in that offense, I think it's either the guys that are going to lead in targets, it's either going to be more likely than not, it's going to be either Amon-Ra St. Brown's probably going to lead in targets, but there are going to be games based on the matchup where Laporta should see a significant amount of targets. Maybe might even see more targets than St. Brown. Kyle Pitts, that's a guy I just never can give up on. When you look at some of the stats I don't have them in front of me, but there's some stats he popped up when I looked at the tight end position over the last 3 years are just kind of notable. He has like the highest yards per reception over the last 3 years. So I just think this is going to be the year we finally get the Kyle Pitts experience we've all been waiting for. They got Kirk Cousins. If Kirk Cousins does get hurt and he can't play, they drafted Michael Penix Jr. I think now with having both those guys at the quarterback position, regardless of who is in the lineup, that raises the floor of Kyle Pitts, and that's also going to be able to raise the help him reach that ceiling that we've all been waiting for. I'm going to go ahead and say it, but if I'm going to be going after Kyle Pitts pretty hard this year, this is going to be the last time I'm doing that, because if he cannot have that breakout performance, where he does end up as the tight end one, I just don't know if you're going to be able to trust him going forward. Another guy that I could see potentially being the tight end one by the end of the season is going to be Dalton Kincaid for the Bills. The Bills passing attack, it's completely changed. Stephon Diggs is out. And unfortunately, Curtis Samuel is out for the foreseeable future with a toe injury. I believe I saw that today that came out. So it's either going to be like in these games, he's either going to be Khalil Shakir, maybe Keon Coleman, and then probably Dalton Kincaid. Those are the three players right now that are in competition to lead this Bills passing attack in targets. And one thing I'm factoring too with the Bills offense, which I should have talked about when I spoke about their wide receivers on Saturday, is I think the Bills defense is going to take a very step back. They basically have a brand new revamped secondary that are full of young players. So this defense, I'm not sure it's going to be able to be as good as we've seen the Bills defense in the previous seasons. So that means that Bills offense is more likely going to have to put up points to win games this year. So if they're going to be putting up points, I want a part of that. So that's why I would not mind taking a shot on Kincaid. Trey McBride, we saw what he did towards the second half of his rookie season for the Cardinals last year. That also kind of played in factor when Kyler Murray got back into the lineup. And then what I really like too is they drafted Marvin Harrison Jr. They got Greg Dortch. They got Michael Wilson on the outside. So they do have some receiving options on the boundary, and especially when Marvin Harrison I think he's going to hit the ground running. And if he can, it'll be interesting to see how soon he can draw double coverage from the secondary. And what that will do is that's actually going to open up the middle of the defense that they're playing against, and I think that's even going to open up more opportunities for McBride to get targets his way. So that's why I think he has the potential to finish as a top 5 tight end this season. Another tight end that could be a sneaky addition. He's probably not going that you could get later than some of these names. It's going to be the Cowboys tight end Jake Ferguson. He's been very solid so far in his young career. And then when you look at that Cowboys passing attack, like I said on Saturday, I totally expect CeeDee Lamb to probably get a contract soon and be back in the lineup for Week 1. But then you got an older Brandon Cooks. I like what Jalen Tolbert could potentially be in year 3 for the Dallas passing attack. But what I really like for these pass catchers in the Dallas offense is right now the Cowboys backfield is an old wore down Ezekiel Elliott and Rico Dowdle, right? So they might be having games where they're struggling to run the ball, and they're going to have to lean on passing that ball, which will create more opportunities for Ferguson where he can give you those tight end one type of performances throughout the season. Moving into the next section, these guys are tight end 2s that offer a high ceiling. In this tier in my last year's video, this was where Sam Laporta was. So these are guys where I think if everything goes right, they could potentially be a top 5, top 8 tight end by the end of the season. Obviously, you got the prime, the best tight end from this past draft class, Brock Bowers with the Raiders. Obviously, there is kind of a concern. Gardner Minshew has been named the starting quarterback. We probably will see Aiden O'Connell at some point this season. But I think with him, with the type of talent that he has, I expect that the Raiders are going to manufacture touches for him. They should, considering they spent the top 15 draft pick on him. And then one thing I'm factoring with Bowers that can give him a high ceiling as a rookie tight end is I kind of feel like Devontae Adams is going to be traded by the trade deadline. So if that does happen, that means in the second half of the year, that's going to lead to more potential targets for Bowers. Luke Musgrave, he was in my tight end video, tight ends to target late video that came out back in July. If you guys didn't watch that, anytime you can get involved with a passing attack like what the Green Bay Packers are going to have, I think they're going to put up a lot of points. I'm always willing to take a shot on a tight end like that. We saw how Matt LaFleur utilized Musgrave in the offense. So that's why I think he does offer a high ceiling in his second season. Dallas Goedert, he's kind of more of a high floor guy, but I still view him as a high ceiling tight end option as a tight end too, because outside of AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, there are some question marks. Who's going to be like the third wide receiver when they go out in three wide receiver sets? So I don't totally expect him to have at least the third most targets by the end of the year. And then on top of that, if for any reason Devontae Smith or AJ Brown had a missed time, that's going to create more value for Dallas Goedert. Cole Kmet, I'm just kind of factoring in the Caleb Williams factor. I'm factoring in that young quarterbacks do like to have a safety valve at the tight end position. And kind of like when I talked about Trey McBride, right? The Bears got, Keenan Allen, DJ Montgomery, Romo Dunze, those guys out there working on the boundary. That's going to help open up things and help create space and passing lanes for Kmet to be funneled targets to. So if he'd be a guy I would be willing to take a chance on if I did not get one of those top 10 tight ends. This year's potential Sam Laporta rookie season? Ben Sinnott for the Washington Commanders. Same thing I just talked about with the Caleb Williams, the Cole Kmet. You got Jaden Daniels, who was named the Commanders' starting quarterback today. Do the pair of rookies develop that chemistry? And what I like about Sinnott too, besides the things that he did show at his college days at Kansas State, is that. Right now it's Terry McLaurin. It sounds like they really don't have a pecking order of wide receivers behind Terry McLaurin. So right now there's a pathway where in certain games you might see Ben Sinnott have the second most targets in this passing attack. He might be a player you have to be patient on. He might be a tight end you can potentially get off the waivers, but I still view him as a high ceiling option, especially if you are in 12, 14 team leagues and you want to take a shot and you want to fill up the other positions and just wait on a tight end till the later rounds. Isaiah Likely, again, I talked about him in tight ends to target late. I still do like him, even though Mark Andrews is back. And just kind of like I talked about Mark Andrews, I think it's going to be Andrews and Zay Flowers that lead the team in targets. But I don't really trust a Rashad Bateman or a Nelson Aguilar. I think there's a potential where Isaiah Likely, if you look at it, could potentially have the third most targets. I think they're going to utilize both of these tight ends. I mean, Isaiah Likely cannot show the type of producer that he can be in that offense last year and just put him on the sideline just because Andrews is back. They should be utilizing more two tight end sets this year, at least in my opinion. So if you wanted to take a chance on him, now him and like Ben Sinnott might be tight ends you might want to stash on your bench if you wanted to, maybe get a safe option, which I'm going to talk about here in a moment. But those are guys I think that still offer you a high ceiling, even though you might have to be patient on them. Now, this next one, as you can see on that graphic, there's an asterisk next to his name. It's TJ Hawkinson. I still included him. He tore his ACL towards the end of the year. He's going to probably start the season on the PUP list, the PUP list. So if he does, that means he is going to miss at least the first month of the year. If you wanted to go with one of the safe options I'm about to speak about in the next tier, and then if you do have an IR spot in your league where you could stash TJ Hawkinson on your IR until he returns in the second half of the year, I would definitely consider that, because if it wasn't for that ACL injury, he would be in my tight ends ones with a high floor tier. One stat on Hawkinson is he is among those 4 tight ends that have at least 10 games of 75 plus receiving yards in the regular season over the last 3 years. Moving into the final tier, like I've been kind of talking about with the last 3 tight ends, Sinnott, Likely, and Hawkinson. If you wanted to be patient with those guys and maybe stash them on your bench, maybe with Hawkinson stash them on your IR if you can. These are 3 players I think that are safe tight ends to at least start the year for, while you maybe try to like keep your eye out for a potential higher ceiling type of tight end. Dalton Schultz, we know what he is. He would be a safe. He would be like a tight end 2 with a high ceiling if it wasn't for all the additions in the Houston passing attack. Obviously, I think that it's going to be Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, and Tank Dell. They're going to be most of the time leading the team in targets. Schultz will have his games depending on the matchup with the defense. One thing with Dalton Schultz, he is among 4 tight ends that have at least 9 regular season games where they finish with at least 50 plus receiving yards and at least 1 touchdown since 2021. Pat Freiermuth, I view him as a safe option. He kind of has a potential high ceiling. It's just that I don't know if we can trust Russell Wilson or Justin Fields at this point, especially from what we saw this past Saturday night. But the thing is, he does have a path to have the second most targets in this offense, unless they do trade for Brandon Ayuk over this next week. Freiermuth, more times than not, is going to finish behind George Pickens on any given week with the second most targets, which is why I think he's a safe option because he'll give you a high floor to at least begin the season. I just don't know if there's much of a ceiling with him right now based on the quarterbacks they have in Pittsburgh. Lastly, Tyler Conklin. He's just been a very solid tight end over the last 3 years. He's seen actually, I think he was in my tight ends to target late video. I forget the stat, but he has like the last 3 years he has at least 75 plus targets if I remember that right. And I just factored in that Aaron Rodgers is going to be back, which that's going to level his potential production. It's going to close down the targets and receptions, which should give him a high floor. Like I said, a safe option to begin the year with, while you maybe kind of keep an eye out for potential high ceiling tight ends to add onto your roster. So yeah, that wraps up my tier video, guys. If you enjoyed this one, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you do follow me on all my social media platforms, on TikTok, X, my YouTube channel. If you guys want to hit a follow, I'm eight subscribers away on YouTube from cracking 100. That'd be pretty cool if I could hit that before the season. Other than that, I do plan on getting you guys my streamable defenses for week 1 that you should draft. I'm planning on getting that out to you guys on Wednesday night. So stay tuned for that. Other than that, I'm gonna hop off here. You guys enjoy your night, your week, your weekend, your morning, whenever you're watching this, your afternoon. I'll talk to you soon. Peace out.